Hey everyone, welcome to A Different Many Paths, the travel edition. I know it's been some time. I needed to step back some, and I had to do a lot so far with We Are Bikers, Your Bikes Unite, and we've done a lot of traveling. So I'm going to talk about it some. I'm going to talk about what I've experienced, what I've seen, and also just the facts of how our communities are handled. So everyone knows that I have a team behind me, and we've created an organization to help the biker community. But I hope it triggers, I think we all hope it triggers into society, because that's only a plus plus for riders when it comes to being noticed and who they are and respected and stuff like that. And plus, I think it also will help turn the tides of how we think as a humanity aspect of things, I guess. I'm hoping that this makes us realize that it's not one against the other, but for each of us to sit there and say, okay, you have a different opinion, I have a different opinion. We can still not even coexist, but we can still we can still respect each other because you respect my boundaries. And that's what we're losing in the United States. We're losing those boundaries. We're losing the listening skills. I've done a lot of research on active listening and how we're not active listening and not taking responsibility for ourselves. And it's hard. It's hard to sit there and look at yourself and say, okay, I need to do better, but also to do research on how we get facts, watch what we support, you know, just be careful of how we handle things because sadly, mainstream media has never been our friend on either sides of things. And on top of that, it causes hysteria and stigmas and stereotypes and how we generalize. And we already are, as a human being, we assume a lot. And it's been emotional hard. And so as I travel, I talk to everybody. I talk to business owners, to average day Americans, to bikers, of course, because I run a bike organization. I sit down with riders. But right now, I've kind of been in the everywhere stage at this time and place in Georgia. And I've been talking to a lot of bikers. I had a situation a few weeks ago in Recon, Georgia with their school board and bikers. And then we had a situation in Tennessee with the school board and bikers. And I realized that it's just a lot bigger than, I don't know. I try not to, I know we have to narrow our stuff down of what we do, but it kind of all reflects off of each other in some circumstance. Like it's all kind of, I see it as like a web and it's all related in different ways. And we can, if this helps in this topic, it may help in this topic as well. And there's always one word that describes, or a couple words that describe really what the overall topic is that can trickle into each other to make a difference, if that makes sense. And I've just been trying to put my thumb on the word of how do I so for example, I have for some reason this month has been like I call it the public school system month. It's so surreal of the biggest feedback I get in Georgia, from Recon, Georgia, all the way to Albany, is that their school systems are not supporting the community. They're not supporting their own students. They're not supporting the parents. The parents feel like they're isolated. My bikers feel like they're being stigmatized when they walk with their leathers. There's bullying happening. No one's listening. Like when he shows up in his bike, it's just fascinating of how they treat him and his wife. And, there's just been so much, and it's sad. And right now, we're just observing and listening, and how we do that is important. How do we do this? How do we handle these things? How do we go about talking and doing right? And mind you, there's people out there that feel like this can make them a profit, and that's not what I want our organization to do. It's not I'm not for profit. Like we're more of a nonprofit situation where we want to make a difference. Now we still need to feed our families. We still need to pay bills. I still need to get out of the debt I dealt with my marriage, which I will be working on by myself. But it's the fact, and I'm honest about it. Like I'm not gonna sugarcoat it or cover it up. And you got to be honest with it for us to do better and for me to get better and do better as a human being. And I hope I teach people how to not only look at themselves, but also look at the bigger picture and how you have to go through things to grow, even if it's not what you're hoping to grow. It's not everything is roses, not everything is positivity. Sometimes there's a whole lot of mountain climbing and obstacles and rocks falling on your face. But for some reason, I've just been dealing with the school board this past month. And it's hard because, I am a bike organization. I deal with riders. I deal with stigmas, stereotypes, profiling, and bikers have kids. And biker kids associate with average day kids all around. There's homeschoolers, there's public school, there's private school. There's just so much. And having to sit there and listen to people of, hey, how do you feel about your area? And right away they say, yeah, our school systems stink. We just don't have the support. The school boards are for big pockets. They don't care about us. We're a number to them to get money in their school system. And then they don't listen to us. Bullying has been a huge issue. And not only in the state, kids have been committing suicide because they don't get the emotional support. But when they do get the emotional support, it's not the support they need because the support system is not listening to them, like active listening. So I realized through this whole process, it comes down to like active listening. And you sit there as a traveler, all right, because again, I'm traveling and I'm in and out of these communities and I'm talking to these people and these beautiful human souls, and you realize they just want to be heard. And so, of course, I'm going to sit there. It's a human aspect because it affects my bikers, so I'm going to step in. And if it trickles into the real world, then thank goodness. And I feel like the school system, the conversation, the school board systems should trickle in. I think because again, their kids are just average students. One day they're going to ride themselves probably and wear leathers and follow their family's footsteps. But at the same time, they are interacting with their generation and making friends and talking and mingling, and they're talking to teachers, and these families are coexisting. Like it's fascinating how people treat each other because you're different. And I just don't understand why. Is it brought up to nurture versus nature? Is it because you're not supporting your household? Is your family not talking to you? And then when you get to school, you take it out in the school. Is that what's happening? And mind you, with me, it comes down to, okay, if my biker's being stigmatized in this simple situation of trying to see his daughter's event, or for example, for 10 years being bullied and no one's listened to them, or somebody's like throwing holy water, and that's a real thing. Someone was throwing holy water on a biker student or biker's kid. And, and it wasn't even about the bikers, just they were throwing holy water on people in their classroom, which I just think is really weird. And, and I'm all about faith. Like, I'm a Christian, you guys, but that's not the time and place to be throwing holy water on people. I don't even know what's going on with that mind, but it was never handled. The school boards, the principals, they never did anything. And the lack of support, and it comes down to like people just wanting a job, teachers not being paid enough, but also the control in the school boards, like the school systems, because it's funny how they're trying to keep control, but they're not doing the humanity right thing. And that's a hard question. And so as a traveler, I'm traveling to help humanity. How am I supposed to do that? How am I supposed to handle that? And I'm hoping we can be sunshine and roses and be like, oh, this is traveling blog. But this is part of my travel, you guys. I'm traveling to different areas and I'm literally going in and out of these school boards and I'm traveling to local areas. And I hope that as a traveler, as a tourist, I know we're on vacation and we enjoy ourselves, but also look about that community. You're putting your money back in that community. Be aware of what you're doing, where your money goes, but also be aware of where you go. I mean, in a good way. You don't want to stick out like a sore thumb and be like, oh, I'm a tourist. Yes, we are tourists, but you want to be the local. And when it comes to being the local, it's pretty much understanding the dynamic of the town, the dynamic of the city. And that includes the school systems. That includes your voting. That includes the city councils. That includes the shops and the people that work and live there. You're spending money in their establishment. You're giving that money in their taxes and you're giving back to the community. Like, it all coexists. I don't know how to explain it. It's all connected. And maybe one day people will start seeing my crazy mindset of why I see it that way. And it's not that we're trying to be kumbaya here, because we all have differences, especially in the topic of travel. But my traveling this month was for the school systems. And then on top of that, it was also to support the kids because there's so much bullying going on. And you see it not just in one state, you see it in all different types of states. Like a kid committed suicide up in Tennessee because of bullying and the lack of support the school systems did even afterwards was just a shame. And it's a sad conversation. Those are your kids, those are the next generation that's growing up before us. I look at my son and I think, boy, I couldn't imagine without him being on this earth. Like it makes me so sad to sit there and think about their child not being here anymore. Like I couldn't imagine. And I sat on it for weeks and I was like, I don't even know what I'm going to blog about in this travel podcast. But my podcast is about me traveling. So there's many different paths in traveling, and sadly, not all of it is fun. And it's being facts of saying, okay, I'm building a humanity organization, and it's a lot of work, and I'm narrowing it down, and we're narrowing it down, and we're getting the core thing, but there's still stuff happening, those little things where I know that I can reach out, even with my voice, to sit there and say, hey, you got to do better. Like you, you got to do better. You should be ashamed of yourself. I'm coming in as a transplant. I'm empathizing with your community. I'm sitting down with them. I'm doing what politicians should be doing on a full force. Our politicians should not be in DC in their comforts of their big, massive houses. They need to be in the community. They need to be sitting there doing what I'm doing and not just talking, but they need to be active listening. And I sit there and I'm like, we're not a political organization, we're a humanity organization, but it all coincides of who we are. Your beliefs are who you are. And for some reason we sit there, oh, that's politics. Well, no, that's your belief. That's your humanity belief in your rights. And you have a voice. Just because, mind you, there is laws, there are legal aspects, and there's stuff that happens. But for us to sit there and deal with that, then we'd have to sit there and make excuses of not to reflect our politics into our school systems because there's politics in school systems. It may not just be the government of voting, but there's politics when it comes to who you know in the school systems and how they get to point A to point B. And also there's politics in your own darn school or your community leagues or your sports leagues. Like it's fascinating of how we sit there and they say, "Oh, politics are only in Washington D.C." No, they're surrounding us in a daily business. These hot, important topics that affect our average day life. Our lives shouldn't be political. Our lives shouldn't have to sit there and be focused on being a voting decimal of yes or no. It should be sitting there saying, "Okay, it's a human right." Your child deserves a safe space in school. Your child deserves not to be bullied. And when they go to a teacher about bullying, then in a professional manner, the teacher and the principal and that's their village. And they have to, as a village, I don't know, I think of olden times villages of how, they sat around in a commune and they talked about how to resolve a situation in a very um, ethical way, of okay, how we should do this and put different ideas on the table to resolve the situation. And bullying is just unacceptable, but we also have to think of the fact of why the kid's bullying, why the kid's doing this. Like, is it that? And we don't want to blame. We don't want to sit there and say, oh, it's the parent. No, no, it could also just be in his brain. It could just be who he is. It could just be that he is a mean soul. But at the same time, we have to sit there and say, okay, why is he doing this? Is he being picked on also and he has to let it out? Is he not letting communication going? But here's the thing though. When he starts talking or she starts talking, do not hold it against their village or them. You have to listen to see all sides. Now, if things are going wrong and there's like an abuse circumstance, then you're going to have to sit there and remove your emotion because it's hard, but you got to move your emotion and sit there and say, okay, what can we do to help this kid out and get him out of the situation? How can we sit there and figure out why this is happening? The whys. Like we don't question each other enough. We don't sit there and sometimes you don't need to know like a lot of like there's boundaries in families. But abuse is never okay at all. And to me personally, once abuse starts, then it's for us to sit there and wiggle our way through and sit there and figure out ways for us to,